So in the last episode of this podcast, I was talking about how the past can influence the present. And, time being a linear thing, one moment happens after the next. It makes sense, doesn't it, to think that our past will impact our present in some way, sometimes in a big way, sometimes in a small way. If I do an investment, for instance, and it pays off, then the fact that I did that good investment now impacts my present. By the same token, if something bad happens that might impact my sense of self, then that event in the past is impacting my present as well. And that all makes sense. After all, we don't have time travel. The past is before the present, and the past will impact the present. So it's strange then when we consider the complete opposite. The idea that it's not only the past that impacts the present, but it's the future. As I say, it's a strange idea, isn't it? That the idea that the future can impact the present. How on earth can the future impact the present when the future hasn't even happened yet? I mean, it makes sense that the past impacts the present, but the future? Well, let me explain. Let's say you're going on holiday tomorrow. Are you not packing your suitcases today? Isn't the fact that you're going on holiday tomorrow influencing what you're doing in the now? Would you really be packing those suitcases if it wasn't for what's going to be happening in the future? Isn't that a perfect example of the future influencing the now? And there's lots and lots of similar examples to this. So the other day I drove to another city, and the very fact that I was driving to another city rather than round the corner meant that I even did things like check my petrol gauge differently. Because if I'm driving to another city, I need to make sure that I've got petrol. And so I ended up going to get petrol, simply because in the future I was going to be in another city. In another hour's time I was going to be somewhere else. Had I have just been going round the corner, I wouldn't have needed more petrol. And yet the future influenced my present in that moment. Now, I see this in therapy a lot, because as well as looking at how the past impacts us, I'm also interested in what it is that you want going forward. And one of the things that I do is I help people to identify what that future looks like. So for instance, if there's a problem that you're dealing with, as well as looking at the problem itself, one good question that could be asked is, so suppose that the problem is no longer here. What is it that your future looks like without the problem? If you no longer had the problem, what does tomorrow look like, for instance? What are the things that you'd notice about tomorrow that would let you know that the problem no longer existed? And you can take that even further, to further points in the future. If the problem was no longer here and you were a year down the line, how would that look different a year down the line? And so what you can do with that sort of question is to start building a future in your imagination of what life without the problem might look like. And by the same token, any time that you look forward and start to think about what is it I want in life, even setting a goal, for instance, will start to create a future for you that impacts the present. So, when I decided that I wanted to be a psychotherapist, for instance, that goal for the future influenced my present at the time, because I enrolled for psychotherapy training. Without that goal, without that sense of the future, without that future that I'd decided for myself, I wouldn't have needed to enter psychotherapy school. In fact, that would have been a strange decision if I didn't have that goal of becoming a psychotherapist. So as you can see, the plans that we make for tomorrow actually influence today. It's not just the past that influences now, it's the tomorrow that we wish for, that we aim for, that influence today as well. So my question to you then is, what's the tomorrow that you're hoping for? What's the tomorrow that will exist if you overcome the challenge that you're facing now? And as you look to get closer to that tomorrow, how does it influence today? Because now you know that it's not just the past that influences today, it's the future as well. Now, if you've enjoyed the episode, you might want to check me out. I'm Alun Parry at alunparry.com. That's spelled with a U, A-L-U-N. And you can also find me on liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. So if you want to work with me, or if you just want to read my blogs or find out more about me, then go to either alunparry.com or liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk and check out the other episodes as well, because if you've enjoyed this one, you'll probably enjoy those as well. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next podcast.